Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank both of you for putting forward a serious proposal. I think it's absolutely essential that we mobilize the American public so they understand how urgent the problem is. And I think one of the ways we do that is, we hear this term debt crisis all the time. Can you describe in layman's terms what a debt crisis is going to feel like? How's it going to affect a family, an individual? Not just in theory, but in layman's terms, what is that going to do to a family?
Their interest costs in every single thing they have are going to rise and rise relatively rapidly. The quality of education that they can provide their schools is going to erode. Their university systems are going to, the research they do is going to evaporate, and therefore the likelihood of that creativity creating the next new thing here rather than somewhere overseas is less, so therefore the less likelihood that there'll be a new job, even if they're trained for that new job down the road. There's likelihood that the training funds will be there to train them. Their roads, their bridges, their highways will be less. There'll be fewer cops on the street. It will affect them in every way possible.
It's not going to be pretty.
And excuse me, Senator, and the guy that gets hurt the worst will be the little guy that everybody always talks about. That's who's going to get hammered when that happens.
I don't think we can make that point loudly enough. You touched on one question I wanted to ask in terms of how do we redeem these Social Security bonds. I mean, we talk about the system is solvent to 2037, but that's by redeeming these bonds. In your fix, did you fix that on a cash flow basis? Or how is the $2.5 trillion that we're either going to have to tax the American people again for or borrow from China, how's that accounted for?
We did a couple of things. On the revenue side, we raised the minimum payment that somebody would be taxed upon. Today, it's capped at $106,800. On the natural, it will grow to $168,000 by 2020. We took it to $190,000 by 2020. So you'd pay that tax on the differential on $22,000, and we reduced the rate of growth in benefits being paid to people at the higher levels because we changed what's called the bin rates, and we changed the age, eligibility age, and we also changed the rate of inflation to what's called change CPI, which is a slightly lower rate of inflation than the regular CPI.
So again, you did account for the fact that $2.5 trillion needs to be raised in some way, shape, or form, and you've accounted for that dollar amount.
Yeah, has to be.
Okay. You know, you're projecting or you're proposing that we increase revenue to 21% of GDP. In the President's 2012 budget, we've never hit 21% of GDP in terms of revenue. We've hit it close 3 times in 1944, 1945, and I think the year 2000. I mean, I kind of subscribe to Hauser's law. It says that no matter what the tax rates are, we're going to get about 18.8% of GDP in terms of revenue. How do you overcome that? Again, I'm kind of a reality-based guy. You know, I want to look at real facts and figures.
Me too. I looked at the forecast. I saw that that revenue was forecast in 2020, I think, to be approximately 19% of GDP. Spending was about 25% of GDP. That was a 6% gap. I've had to figure out how in the world are we going to close this gap. I wanted to close the vast majority of it on the spending side, so we took somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 out of spending. Therefore, we had to, if I wanted to get to a balanced budget, I had to do some on the revenue side. Historically, we have balanced the budget always, you know, at as you said, at a level below 21% of GDP. And so I thought that was the maximum level we could get to. And I also thought it was probably one of the lowest levels we could get spending down to.
But no matter what the rates we've taxed people at, we've never raised, on average, more than about, well, never raised 21%. And
right,
on average,
that's why we said that ought to be
18%.
the maximum level, I think is what our report says.
Okay. I guess one final question. I don't subscribe to the theory that it has to be comprehensive reform. I mean, I think the American people want single-issue bills. They want to be able to understand what we're trying to do here. So with that in mind, did you make any attempt to prioritize the components of this in terms of, you know, obviously Social Security is number one, I think, in your book, but did you prioritize the other recommendations if we did this in a piecemeal fashion?
So we did Social Security separately because we thought we were doing that not for deficit reduction, but for 75-year solvency to save Social Security. We did not prioritize the others. We looked at it on a comprehensive basis because I believe you have to do all of it, you know, not just one little bit of it, if in fact you're going to deal with this $1.6 trillion deficit in a fiscally responsible manner.
Okay, thank you.